Idiot widower trying to make better decisions and ultimately attempt to beat the demon puppeteer in dead silence. Everyone knows she goes to the movies to read, so a title card tells us the word ventriloquist came from the belief that the dead could talk through the stomachs of the living. Jamie Ashton and his wife Lisa are repairing the sink in their janky-ass apartment when there's a knock at the door. There's no return address. Only Jamie's name is scrawled across the parchment. They tear the wrapping away to find slapping the dummy from Goosebumps laid out in red velvet. Jamie has no idea who could have sent this thing, but clearly it's somebody who hates him. Lisa tells Jamie it reminds her of a terrifying poem she learned as a kid about Mary Shaw, who could have no children, only dogs. It's lucky there wasn't a return address on it. Now, toss this creepy monstrosity into the garbage, right? Right? Oh, we're keeping this. And we're propping it up in her bed under the sheets for shits and giggles. Maybe Lisa's one of those wives who wants to collect on her insurance policy. I mean, this looks like the sort of trick a serial killer would set to the victim. In a few minutes, Jamie will also tell us that the town is wrong. Puppets like this are a bad omen. So why would you keep it? As any reasonable adult would do, Jamie should prop this thing up in the apartment lobby with a free sign on it on his way out the door to fetch takeout. Or, set it to a wood chipper. I'm not gonna tell you what to do with the creepy giveaways on your doorstep. All I'm saying is this thing came gift around with Jamie's name on it. This little gifter has our name and knows where we live. How about we write out a quick list of everybody we know? Jamie is in his 30s. He has like 5 friends back. But on that list, no enemies to speak of, except for his dad, who he had a strange falling out with years ago. Jamie's out grabbing Chinese and starts moving on its own, messing with the power kettle on the stove. Lisa's mind immediately jumps to her new house again. Instead of checking the hallway to see if the power's still on in the rest of the building, sure, he could just wait outside the door when Jamie gets home. Knock on the neighbor's door. Where's the one in that? I know my first instinct is to go pull the sheet off that creepy-ass doll laying in her bed. Lisa reaches for the sheet when it suddenly envelops her and hurls her into the hallway with internal injuries. An invisible force reels Lisa in across the floor. She screams, but no one hears her. After all, she lives all alone out here in the middle of the... Oh, right. She lives in an apartment building where a half a dozen people should have heard her screaming, but somehow didn't. Jamie comes up to a near house fire and Lisa's calm voice beckoning him to the house. In the hallway, he slips in blood. Not a good sign. He follows Lisa's voice to the bedroom and tears off a sheet to find Lisa's fully mutilated body. Now, unnaturally wide, arms and eyes frozen in fear, lying for the puppet once dead on the bed. This is a great time to talk about this video's sponsor, Dislike, the turn-based mobile role-playing game where you form as a demigod with ancient divine powers that can actually affect the world, saving it from the Miramon Lord's hellbent, defiling our worldly society, and not channeling the energy of a demigod was cool. Dislike has launched its new Esper guidance, channeling the power of the king of gods himself, Zeus. After an invasion, the Miramon left his wife dead. Gaius has made it his mission to honor her by sparing others a similar fate, raining down big, nasty lightning bolts, any enemy besieging this world. Gaius, aka Zeus, was one of the first Espers to gain power, and he, along with a few others, formed the Esper Union. He's taking a backseat, but still maintains a serious attitude, focused, low-key, discreet. Zeus believes that he and the Esper
thunder, and he's the only hero that has the unique God King mode, which made him more powerful than many other espers. Download the trendy, futuristic mythology RPG today and summon Almighty Zeus into your team. If you have downloaded this light, as you should have, if I mean anything to you at all, please reopen it through the link in the description. Use the code ESPERUNION, and nice to see you for extra homecoming gifts on the house. Jamie's left in a police interrogation room. Detective Clifton, obviously recently transferred from the Amityville Police Department, effortlessly accuses Jamie of the murder of his wife and trying to use the rose he brought her as a fake alibi. Really, Lipton? A rose? I'm insulted. If I wanted to murder my wife and get away with it, I'd have an elaborate bulletproof alibi. Your weak pop ass wouldn't be on the case. Jamie asks him to convince him up, the strange delivery that appeared on their doorstep right before. Lipton doesn't believe in bad omens. Yeah, this is about the time I remind you that drugs are not your friends. No conversation in a room where questioning is casual. The moment Lipton mentions us as a suspect in her wife's murder, the first thing out of her mouth is, I invoke my right to remain silent, and I invoke the right to speak to my lawyer. Then we shut the fuck up, no matter what comes us next. Jamie returns.
When the sawdust settles and the engine finally roars, the thing you care about most is a job well done. But when you get your tools from Harbor Freight,
turns to his apartment, where we see that the crack team in Amityville's worst police department cataloged some evidence, but not all of it, like the ventriloquist dummy laying by the bed where Lisa died, or the massive trunk it came in. At this point, I'd be thinking slasher more than Spectre. I'd search for a local lab or drug-addled forensics tech, bucket paint and collect and test any evidence from the trunk and doll. Jamie tears away the velvet trunk lining to expose a poster for The Amazing Mary Shaw and Billy Show at Rayman's Fair. Another raging clue. That Mary Shaw sounds familiar. Well, I'm sure glad her dead wife remembered that obscure poem from her childhood just before the puppet killed her. Puppet strapped in like a toddler in the backseat. Jamie same days into Silent Hill. Rayman's Fair, a one-horse town that butchered its horse. Jamie arrives to his childhood mansion where his hot new stepmom Ella greets him at the door. There, he learns his father Edward had a stroke recently and is now wheelchair-bound. Jamie asks his dad about the Mary Shaw poem. Beware the stare of Mary Shaw. She had no children, only dolls. Ella finishes it for him. If you see her in your dreams, be sure you never ever scream. Is something being foreshadowed here? Could this nursery rhyme that everyone from this town already knows supply everything we needed to defeat the evil in this place? Possibly. Jamie crashes at the last night in Soho Motel, where he decides to prop Billy up at the table like a wooden boy, instead of, stashing his creepy ass in the case he came in, and then put that in the trunk of our car. Billy plays peekaboo with him by the bedside, before Mary Shaw unfurls in the corner, and Jamie wakes himself from the nightmare by turning on the light. Hey, can we put Billy in the trunk now, Jamie? Or drop kick him into a campfire? At the funeral home, the mortician begins his examination of Lisa's body. Recognizing the gruesome handiwork instantly, he hears the childlike voice of his wife, Marianne, who's hiding in the crawl space claiming she's back. Can't get to her down here. That's reassuring. Any other tips, Marianne? Do we need to go stuff our own emotional support ravens? Even though his wife was full of life and laughter, Jamie does the sensible thing of burying her in the family's gothic graveyard with the weeping angels from Doctor Who to keep her ghost company. He notices a woman wandering in the woods. It's Marianne. She warns him Mary Shaw is back. Before her husband drags her away, she tells him to bury the doll. Jamie discovers a gravestone and learns that Mary Shaw was a real person. I don't know about you, but if a cryptic woman comes out of nowhere to warn me about the exact person haunting my life like a desperate ex, I'm chasing after her for all the details to this burying ceremony I need to do. I'd ask where it needs to be done, if I have to say any spells or Bible verses over it, and what'll happen if I scream when Mary Shaw appears in my dreams. Yeah, Jamie hasn't reached the evil doll bit in realization yet, but he himself said that these puppets were bad omens. At the very least, I'm burying Billy in the shallow grave behind the motel during broad daylight. I'm not going anywhere with him after the lights go down. And I am definitely heading up to town hall or the local library for information about Mary's death. When I finally believe she killed my wife. I'd want to figure out why she targeted me specifically, and once the lab I paid came back with fingerprints from Billy's truck, I would want to confront the very alive human person shipping puppets for Mary to victims out of town. Jamie brings the puppet to Mary Shaw's graveyard and searches the headstones until he finds one for Billy and digs up the empty casket. Billy's mouth clicks open, and the sound in the forest dies. Jamie tosses Billy into the casket, but oh no, Billy's got a jump scare him before Jamie seals him inside. Back on the road, figures dart around Jamie's car before Billy pops up by his window. Naturally, Jamie immediately leaves the safety of his automobile to go look for him. You dumb son of a... Do you want to die? This is as bad as stepping out of your cabin into pitch darkness when something's throwing rocks at your window. You see this? This is Jamie's evil doll minute moment. If burying Chucky's pervier cousin isn't gonna cut it, it's time to try everything. Salt it, burn it, wrap it in iron, stab it in the heart with silver, drench it in holy water, everything. My first stop is Home Depot to grab a fire extinguisher, a Schrader valve, a hose clamp, and 1/4-inch brass hose adapter, a wind-resistant barbecue lighter, fuel, a hammer, 3/4-inch lamp wicks, a bike pump, and a faucet supply tube. Can you guess what I'm building here? Yes, a compact flamethrower to keep in my car and carry with me anywhere I go. Jamie returns to his dumpy motel. He steps out of the bathroom to Billy's frozen face, Detective Lipton sitting in Billy's seat by the window. Lipton tells Jamie he's been following him. He talks through Billy to suggest that Jamie buried the doll because it was evidence that would prove he murdered Lisa. This guy's short memory is infuriating. We literally told you to investigate the puppet back when you first questioned us. At least he's done us a solid by breaking into our motel room so we can lodge a formal complaint against him that we can use in court later. Plus, he's broken the chain of command by not taking his so-called evidence back to his station for immediate processing, and by not wearing gloves when he touches it. Jamie tells him the story of Mary Shaw, but he should be thinking through the steps the detective would have to take to get to his room tonight. Following us? I can almost understand, but Lipton would have had to follow us out to the graveyard, watch us bury Billy, then dig it up, contaminating a whole slew of forensic evidence in the process, just to come jump scare us with it. I mean, there's dedicated, and then there's just weird. At least Lipton takes the creepy thing with him for the night. The next morning, Jamie waits until Lipton leaves the motel before breaking into his room and stealing the puppet back. He takes it to the mortician. In a flashback, we learn the fate of Mary Shaw. The little boy heckled Billy during a stage performance and disappeared. Shortly after, Mary was murdered. Her creepy-ass will stated that all 100 of her dummies were to be buried with her after she herself was turned into a doll. This is what happens when you neglect your kids. In the years following her death, dozens of townsfolk died and had their tongues ripped out. Apparently, in all that time, nobody thought to go out and start a big bonfire in her grave. Also, is anyone else getting Nightmare on Elm Street vibes here? Mary and Freddy were both murdered for suspected child killings, and they seek revenge by going after the families of those that killed them. They've also got their fanfic poems going for them.
Try Floristore, the #1 pharmacist-recommended probiotic. Because when your gut is unbalanced, you feel the difference. Get the goat of probiotics today. Floristore.
Welcome to TestRail, the comprehensive test management solution used by thousands of QA and development teams around the world. With TestRail, you can manage test cases.
Then long after they've died, Jamie enters Mary's theater. He ventures backstage and up onto a rickety catwalk for the thrill of it, until he comes to Mary's rooms. A weathered trunk holds Mary's ancient scrapbook containing the IKEA manual for building the perfect doll. It's like a reverse Pinocchio. To make a wooden puppet, you need a living boy. Turns out the little kid who went missing after her big performance was related to Jamie. Surely we'll take this book of incredible importance with us back to town so we can read over at length and discover all of demonic Mary's weaknesses. Surely this is the key to ending all the nightmares and the creepy doll stalking. Oh no, okay, we'll just leave it here I guess. Another great decision by Jamie. Back at the funeral home, Henry hears his wife rambling to Billy. She claims he spoke to her, but Henry refuses to believe her. He decides to put Billy back in the box when he hears his wife's voice coming from the crawl space. Billy watches as Henry crawls inside. Mary locks him in. He screams, and she uses her Resident Evil tongue to feast down on his while he's still alive. Big puppet demons, man. How do they even work? Henry's lived in this Silent Hill town his whole life. Why is Mary killing him? Was it because he talked to Jamie and gave him some advice? Or was it just because he attack? Why hasn't she killed Jamie already either? All good questions. I hate to speak ill of the dead. Who am I getting? I'd love to do that. But Henry knows better than to shoot his mouth off in front of this thing. He knows it's haunted. He knows it doesn't want to be reburied. And he knows better than to keep leaving this crawl space open for his dementia-stricken wife to crawl into, especially with a demonic ventriloquist on the loose. If only Henry didn't have the attention span of a stoner. He could have just left Marion under the house to sulk while he stayed and focused on burying the doll. You know, the thing that's causing her erratic behavior in the first place. He also forgets his own survival mechanisms. Back when he was a kid, he clapped a hand across his mouth to keep from screaming when he saw her before the rhyme about her was ever even written. Why doesn't he do that again? Actually, let's talk about Mary's MO here for a second. She won't attack unless you scream. Sounds to me like every single one of these townies should have ball gags in their mouth the second they know Jamie's come back with a demonic doll. Shove a sock in there, wear a gimp mask, whatever it takes to prevent yourself from screaming entirely. Not only that, but Jamie heard the rest of Mary's poem, which tells us this very obvious handicap. Within the first hour of returning to town, Jamie could have beat this thing with a 4-inch piece of duct tape. Did I just beat this puppet? I think I just beat this puppet. Jamie confronts his father about the little boy from the scrapbook, Michael Ashen. Edward tells him Michael was his uncle. When he went missing, the Ashens and men from town laid the blame on Mary and made her scream when they cut out her tongue and killed her. She came back for revenge, targeting the men responsible and every person in their families.
Very sharp.
He should have known that kicking his son to the curb, aka metaphorically kicking the can down the road, wasn't a solution and should have gone on the offensive from the very beginning.
This is definitely be realized. We can't run from our fate.
No, you didn't realize this when their wives, children, and children's children had their tongues ripped out? Only just now, when my pregnant wife was murdered, I'd have it in me to Spartan kick old Ed into the fireplace, which would happen to expose Ella's whole charade. At the front door, Jamie runs into Detective Lipton, who shoves himself inside and tells him that someone dug up all 101 of Mary's dolls. Wait, how does he know this? Did he spend the entire day digging up doll graves? Ugh, goddamn. Jamie then gets a garbled up phone call from Henry telling him he can prove he didn't murder Lisa if Jamie meets him at the old theater. Before the detective can arrest Jamie, he pulls into his car and hauls ass for the theater. We're gonna stop by Home Depot first and get our flamethrower assembled, right? Oh, no, okay, just checking. Jamie arrives to the theater unarmed and follows Henry's definitely dead voice across the skywalk to Mary's room. Lipton catches up to him with a 12 gauge right before Henry's dead voice calls out to both men. A woman begins to hum. Jamie tells him not to scream no matter what happens. Should have brought those ball gags. Lipton finds Billy's checkered cousin and tosses it behind him, pulling down a curtain that reveals 100 dolls in glass crypts lined up along the walls. Billy number 57 is missing. A red curtain catches their attention. They whip it aside to find the rotting body of Michael Ashen halfway through his dollification process. Suddenly, all the puppets begin to turn. Pennywise tells Jamie that she won't stop until she has silenced everyone who silenced her, a convincing motive. He asks her why she targeted Lisa. She offers to tell him if he comes closer. Since Jamie has the death wish of a squirrel crossing a busy road, he does just that. Mary tells him Lisa was pregnant. She wanted to kill the last Ashen. She licks Jamie and materializes. Lucky for Jamie, Lipton levels the pump and blows her away. It's not enough. Mary takes her doll fetish to the next level as one by one she begins to possess her puppets. Lipton shoots a few down before Jamie sets fire to the rest. They break for the rickety skywalk, but Mary's rigged it, and Lipton plummets off the edge. When he inevitably screams, Mary rips out his tongue. Again, should have brought the ball gags. She comes for Jamie, but he covers his scream and falls into a pit of liquid luck that leads out to the lake. He remembers the Billy doll is still very much unburned, so he rushes to Henry and Marion's house and discovers Marion cradling Henry's dead body. Marion tells him Ella took Billy's doll. You know what? After all this shit I've learned in the last 48 hours, I say let them keep the damn doll for a few more hours while I go fetch a young priest and old priest and a flamethrower to deal with it in the middle of the day. At the manor, Jamie finds Billy's doll. Mary leaps out at him from the shadows, and he tosses the doll into the fire, causing Mary to writhe in agony. He then spots his father in his wheelchair nearby. When Edward's body falls forward, Jamie discovers Ella had been puppeting him like a ventriloquist dummy all along. I I gotta give props where props are due. I did not see that coming. And to Ella, I mean, that was quite the feat to pull off. Jamie realizes Mary is possessing Ella. He finally loses his mind and screams, opening himself up for Mary to score one more in the revenge column. I just wonder why the hell it took so long. If Edward was already puppified, he would have just made Jamie scream by stabbing him and twisting the knife back when he first walked in the door. Seems like she was more interested in him knowing why she was targeting him rather than actually killing him. Every clue surrounding this doll, every step Jamie took, sucked him back into his hometown drama more and more, until it eventually consumed him. He would have been better off tossing Billy into the Goodwill pile and burying Lisa in the nicer cemetery she deserved. He should have realized very early on that the puppet was sent to him to draw him back to Raven's Fair, where Mary could finish her dark quest for post-mortem revenge. I'm not saying she still wouldn't have come after him had he stayed away, but everything after his initial arrival to his childhood home is a lot of effort to put in when she could just possess Ella's body and stab him when he walked in the door. As for Detective Lipton, if he had done his job and investigated the puppet when Jamie told him to, he would have likely learned about the murders in Raven's Fair and started a larger investigation into the region than he does here, digging up doll graves and breaking into motel rooms. If Jamie had gone for a flamethrower when he had the chance, he could have burned the theater to the ground long before he even realized the connection to his family, and he would have been armed when he discovered who Ella really was. Who am I getting now? This dude willingly hauled around a demonic dummy and propped him up like a real boy in motel rooms and mortuaries. He had no chance. Honestly, it seems like just putting duct tape over your mouth and burning everything in sight could have beat this puppet in like 2 seconds. So I think the demon puppeteer from Dead Silence was beaten.
Dehydrated hair, high hyaluronic acid for your hair. New L-By Hyaluron Pump by L'Oreal Paris. With hyaluronic acid to lock in moisture and hydrate for up to 72 hours.
If you were trapped in the world's dumbest police precinct with toxic smoke, use to turn everything it touches into zombies and what you can do. We cover these zombie shells from hysterics, making zombies, playing zombies to an old-fashioned just one dead zombie usually the sole menace in an otherwise peaceful world. This time, they're summoned back to life by pervasive acid rain cloud that forces everyone to shelter in place without hope of rescue. Your name feels worse than blue. That means doing a terrible job policing a building that is slowly being invaded inside and out. Team members survive their incompetence and keep it over now. We're going to break down the mistakes made by our terrible cops, see if we make better decisions and ultimately defeat the acid rain zombies. Calamity Zone Rising in Amityville, New York, the off-color radio broadcast was interrupted by a massive chemical explosion from Johnson military base, accompanied by a 6.0 earthquake. In the aftermath, soldiers rushed to neutralize the situation. International news anchors tell us 26 soldiers have been counted among the dead so far. Smaller equipment inside the facility are receivers find important and ready for the battle. Scientists have these two soldiers have entered a disaster area to look for survivors while carrying live ammo in their weapons and no first aid kits. When they find a survivor in Jim's lab, they don't even move for a moment. Right, she wasn't dead before. She is now. They're no longer doing this exploratory surgery. But needed, as for the scientist, she waited 2 screens into a member to use the emergency eye wash to take the shower station, which is required by law to be located near the exit of every laboratory. Showers are designed for this exact scenario. Use to flush hazardous chemicals away from the bodies of infected individuals. She also seals the range to the point where she's feeding these soldiers the useless information. I'm talking about nitrogen oxide. Nitrogen oxide is comprised mainly of nitrogen and oxygen molecules mixed with nitrous oxide. Predator mine, the most common one is nitrogen dioxide, which is released from a burning gas. The fire raging through the building would release NO2 on its own. Sulfur dioxide is another common pollutant expelled by burning coal or diesel fuel. Chemical explosion is describing as the replacement of diesel for driving, essentially for the chemical diesel demonstrates the world that a nucleator should have to be alive or mistaken about the chemical makeup of the explosion. Life would be a extra shitty thing to do, but she's already done it herself. It's not like they're keeping a secret now. This is another reason why the soldiers want to contact the weeeee and DOD immediately so they can assess the actual threats looming in the chemical cloud. In an emergency news update, New York's governor asked citizens to remain inside for 48 hours while they try to contain the disaster. First, no listen. Warnings of acid rain barely faints anyone. Sergeant Dash gaps are forgotten events. And it's too understaffed to evacuate anyone. Even if it comes to that, a crimson cloud travels over the city like it's preparing Amityville for a 7 days to die horde night. And the police department still acts like any news gun explosion is coming in via a news anchor. Not saying from any investigation on their part, they learned that their department is being used as a large department in the central part of the city, and that conveniently their radios are not working. This is Jen arrives with the emergency results for the building. Officer Rossi practices the gun range. Sergeant brings in a dinner sandwich to the medical examiner, Dr. Ira, whose assistant child President Cloud is misused and insulted. Body sergeant jump scares Childs, and Dr. Ira reassures him that it's rigor mortis. We also learn that they're awaiting the arrival of prisoner Joe Gallo, the Amityville Strangler, their last detainee before their department closes. When news of Joe Gallo's capture reaches news anchor Jerry, she tells her department head she wants to cover the story herself and heads to Amityville. Meanwhile, Sergeant Dash's son Jimmy arrives, dumped on his dad for the weekend by his flaky mother. The department's detective, McQueen, finally arrives with Gallo. This precinct is now a zombie honeypot full of moronic meatbags. The fact that these officers need a local news station for updates to an explosion that happened in their own town only hours ago tells us this is a squad nobody calls to handle an emergency. Most of these officers aren't even wearing their ranks correctly. Some of the ranks are literally upside down. They can't even handle a parking ticket payment despite wearing the correct rank. Officer Rossi seems to be proudly and blindly firing down this gun range without hitting a target once. And the medical examiner is so filthy and negligent that he's contaminating potential evidence on the bodies of murder victims with ketchup and mustard from his sandwich, endangering the chain of custody. Your best strategy if you find yourself in this particular precinct is to leave immediately and find shelter elsewhere. If it's already raining, find a room with water, food, a radio, and a strong door, and barricade yourself inside to wait out the storm and any incoming rounds from a negligent firearm discharge. As acid rain pours down over the city, an idiot steps out of his car and gives the worst melting performance I've ever seen, before suddenly transforming into a zombie. Meanwhile, a quote-unquote fun weatherman makes jokes about the impossible acid hurricane currently squatting over Long Island and melting people alive. Back at the police station, the lieutenant takes a statement from a civilian named Cooper, but they're interrupted by Mrs. Chen. She berates Dash again for not being able to pay her ticket. Cooper excuses himself to the bathroom. After Lieutenant Stevenson flirts his way to pictures with news anchor Jerry, he agrees to give her 20 minutes with the Strangler for an exclusive interview. Mrs. Chen reaches her literal melting point as she stomps out of the precinct and acid rain begins to eat her alive. The officers smother her in plastic tarp and spirit her back inside. I know about people's intelligence, but Baldy here has all the willful ignorance of a Minnesota college kid wearing shorts and flip-flops to class in January. Normal acid rain has the acidic strength of tomato juice, but if the radio is blaring emergency warnings not to go outside, I might find a covered place to get out of my car just in case. Even if you don't want to do that, what's the harm in cracking your window to double-check? One burn on your arm later, and you'll know whether to believe in radio or not. Chuckles the weatherman, better hope he's not under that acid hurricane if it really is raining hydrochloric acid strong enough to melt people. If it is, then everything metal should be melting, like Baldy's car and parts of the police department building, any air ducts or air conditioning on the roof, any metal bars on the windows, any doorknobs, hinges, or screws holding windows or other external panels in place. As for Mrs. Chen, I don't know about you, but I have this little evolutionary advantage called instinctive avoidance of painful situations. If you walk out into burning rain, run back inside. Don't spin in circles as your skin melts off your bones. The officers who went to save Mrs. Chen lucked into the right choice with the plastic tarp they used to cover her and bring her inside with. Hydrochloric acid is stored in acid-resistant plastic containers, so the plastic should offer resistance long enough to get her to safety. However, once inside, there is no reason to leave the tarp dripping with dangerous chemicals on her body. The tarp should be left by the exit for potential use later. Mrs. Chen is moved to the morgue.
Why Flora Store Daily Probiotic? Well, it's jam-packed with vitamins and zinc. Because
Where the lieutenant tells everyone to get comfortable. No one's allowed outside in the deadly rain. Upstairs, the department's rookie opens the front door and encounters the zombie from earlier. She barely gets the door shut and goes running for the lieutenant. I will say, her door-closing game is on point. While everyone else is distracted, Gallo reaches through his bars and steals a weapon from a bucket of tools that happen to be within reach. Back in the morgue, Mrs. Chen begs for help. Dr. Ira whips a plastic tarp off her body, accidentally splattering acid rain and scalding Malloy's head and Childs' arm. Once the officers move Mrs. Chen inside, they should know from experience that Dr. Ira's morgue is not the most sanitary place to put her. And as the resident doctor who went to medical school to become a medical examiner, Dr. Ira should know he needs to find something basic like baking soda or milk and pour it over Mrs. Chen's wounds to neutralize the acid. He should also know to remove the chemical-soaked tarp carefully to avoid harming her further or hitting anyone else in the room. Malloy sprints away squirming and no one thinks to chase after him to make sure he's okay. Dr. Ira should be guiding him back to the morgue, which should have an eye wash station Malloy can use. Officer Rossi makes her own inexplicable decisions in the lobby, her morbid curiosity getting the better of her, convincing her to open the front door. Rossi has just witnessed Mrs. Chen burned alive by the rain, so she knows what the weather outside can do. She's only lucky a gust of wind didn't painfully scald her back into reality. Not to mention, Baldy appears at the door looking more like a victim in need of medical care than a monster, and she slams the door in his face. Sure, we know he's a zombie, but the police officer doesn't. It's a huge leap in logic to assume he's dangerous. Even if he is, that's what the Glock on her hip is for. And let's not forget, violent strangler Gallo left unguarded in his cell. In the bathroom, Malloy barrels past Cooper, desperate for water to pour on his face, but the sink is out of order. He screams in pain as he notices his wounds in the mirror. The acid rain has hit one of his eyes and his cheeks. He rips his own cheeks off and slams his head onto the sink, falling to the floor. Cooper tries to check on him when Malloy's zombie rears up and chomps down on his arm. Cooper calls out, but nobody shows up to save him. Scrolled away in his bathroom, Cooper would have no idea what's happening in the rest of the building, but he should be quicker on his feet here, either to offer Malloy CPR or to run for help. Honestly, if I saw a man rip off his own face in front of me, you couldn't pay me enough to stay in that bathroom with him. I'd be sprinting out of the door looking for a doctor or a gun before he even hit the floor with a concussion. The news break warns the local area that they're in full lockdown. Nobody should go outside. Gallo's trying to pick his cell lock with a tool he pulled from the bucket when the lieutenant shows up and delivers Jerry and her camera guy for their interview before leaving again. In the morgue, the lights have gone out. Childs flicks on a lighter, only to come face to face with the zombified Mrs. Chen. Dash tries calling out over the radio to Malloy, Childs, and Dr. Ira, but nobody answers. Meanwhile, the zombie Cooper crawls his way out of the bathroom. In a trained police department, Lieutenant Stevenson would know better than to let Jerry and her camera guy anywhere near Gallo, not only because it might damage their investigation or any upcoming trial, but also because they haven't questioned him yet, or searched his body for weapons or evidence. Gallo is also an alleged killer of women. At the very least, Stevenson would be standing nearby to prevent Jerry from accidentally stepping too close to Gallo's cage, where he could easily reach through the bars and attack her. He would also also want to listen to the interview anyways, because if Gallo was read his Miranda rights before being brought to the station, anything he says in the interview could be held against him in a court of law. That's all to say, it's in the lieutenant's best interest to hang around and make sure Gallo doesn't cause any more problems inside the station than they already have. More importantly, once the lights go out in this building, it's time to go to work. A few simple steps here could have ensured the survival of every non-zombie member of this group. First, everyone needs to gather together in one location to assess the situation. If they had gathered, Rossi would have been able to tell everyone about her encounter with Baldy in the lobby, and officers could be dispatched to investigate. They would discover he's a zombie and know what they're dealing with in a more concrete way. Second, the group needs to address 4 facets of this situation. 1. Defense. 2. Power. 3. Supplies. And 4. Communication. The first is obvious. 3 officers need to gear up with guns, ammo, and protective gear and move through the building, barricading ground floor doors and windows. The rest of the group should move to an interior room away from windows and low enough in the building that the hazardous rain will have to eat through several layers of the building to reach them. No one should be wandering off in the dark alone. Once the ground floor's been barricaded, 2 armed officers and the resident fix-it guy, Dr. Ira, should be dispatched to reach the generators and circuit breakers to restore power. While it might draw attention from zombies outside, restoring power in the short term will allow the other officers to move methodically, quickly from floor to floor, checking rooms and clearing zombies. Once the building is clear of threats, additional barricades could be allocated to the main floor while civilians gather food and water and store it in an open jail cell, the final fallback position where survivors can hide safely if the building becomes overrun. The 2-way walkie-talkies should be handed out to each party member and set to the same channel so they can communicate throughout the building. There doesn't seem to be much reason why their comms aren't working, so if need be, someone needs to work on that as well. Meanwhile, the most tech-savvy of the group should be trying to restore their outside communication or use flashlights to try signals to nearby buildings. Instead, most of them wander off by themselves, investigate strange normal coincidences. The zombies are all forced to be located, and that gets the big over. Stevenson rushes in and searing pain. Says he'll be kicked outside. I hit acid rain across the door. Stevenson tells Rossi to collect the reporter and the camera guy. The interview is a 10-hour arrival. The camera guy is in the nearby bathroom. Jerry follows him in, but neither sees Gallo open the cell door behind them. Rossi makes her way through the building with a lighter. She finds Gallo's cell door open. Gun. She tries to call up the name, but the radio isn't working. She hears the whistle in the bathroom. She finds Jerry stabbing her camera guy to death with a screwdriver. Rossi tells her to drop the screwdriver. Jerry refuses. He spikes her with a screwdriver, slicing Rossi's cheek. Suddenly, Jerry's camera guy springs up and bites into her neck. He stabs him again and rushes into the hall. Face to face, meeting Lloyd, terrified. She watches Gallo creep up behind the zombie Lloyd, pull him over the head with a sledgehammer. Back in the bathroom, the zombie creature finds Rossi and sprint, bites down on her cheek. This is why we can't have nice things. Everyone in this building seems to have forgotten their training the second they walked in this morning. Stevenson saw what the rain did to Mrs. Chen's body. There's no need to peek outside. He should also know to send pairs of officers to investigate the whereabouts of civilians. We don't see what happened in the bathroom after Jerry follows her camera guy in, but Rossi enters the room knowing that Jerry has just brutally attacked a man. She should back into the hallway and demand Jerry drop the screwdriver so she's out of range of Jerry's weapon. If Jerry refuses to drop it, Rossi should use her taser to subdue her. Jerry's behavior is simply unpredictable, making her a danger to herself and others. With Jerry subdued, Rossi would also have been in a better position to react when the camera guy springs back to life and begins attacking. As for Jerry, her blind panic ultimately gets her killed. If you're going to slash a cop in the face, leave immediately afterwards. It's unclear whether she had time to make the connection to her camera guy's transformation in zombies, but she knows he tried to attack her before, and she should be physically far away from his body once Rossi is incapacitated. In the hallway, we're left with incomplete information regarding Jerry and Gallo's encounter, but she seems to have transformed pretty quickly after. Upstairs, Dr. Ira comes to check on Jimmy organizing the morgue supply closet. Ira says the power should be on any second, then closes Jimmy in again. Lieutenant Stevenson sees something crawl past the main office door. Zombie Cooper appears at the lobby window, but disappears suddenly. Stevenson, Dash, and McQueen automatically assume it's a zombie and argue about what to do. McQueen mentions his truck is in the alley, but Dash wants to clear the building and get his son. Stevenson warns he doesn't even know where his son is, or if he's still alive. Dash says he was such a terrible father, he can't abandon his son now, and They agree to go save Jimmy together. The trio grabs shotguns and moves into the hall, where they encounter Cooper and blow him away. Like I mentioned earlier, these cops are so bad at their jobs, they simply can't be trusted with our survival. They're more likely to get us killed than save us from anything, as we see here when they shoot Cooper in the face before ever actually confirming he's a zombie. Again, we know he's a zombie. They do not. Their only smart decision here is to stay in the building instead of leaving. But again, they need to fortify this building and begin methodically clearing it of enemies while gathering survivors. Unfortunately, they seem to be the shoot first, ask questions later flavor of cops. So again, it's probably in our best interest to find a room with supplies we can barricade and wait until they've all gotten each other killed. Down in the morgue, Dr. Ira looks for Childs. Zombie Mrs. Chin reaches for him. Ira whips out a scalpel and gets her on the ground before curb stomping her to death. He turns to the doorway and sees Zombie Childs standing there, scalpel in hand. He finishes Childs off too, but his work isn't done as the morgue drawers suddenly begin opening and zombies crawl out. Dash radios Jimmy in the supply closet, but the radio only works one way. Jimmy tells his dad he thinks he hears Dr. Ira outside. Then he grabs a bat. Dash, McQueen, and Stevenson descend towards the morgue. They find Rossi's bloody keys and a gun on the floor when the zombie camera guy suddenly appears. Stevenson double taps him. Dr. Ira seems to be the only party member who actually waits for people to attack before killing them, so at least he's got that going for him. Jimmy's been in the closet practically this whole movie. He has no reason to suspect anything dangerous is outside, but he still grabs a bat for protection. I can respect that. As for our idiots in blue, let's hope survivors in this building have the forethought to speak before revealing themselves to these officers, because they killed this person walking towards them.
Every parent knows when it's time to go into protect mode. Adding Lysol laundry sanitizer kills 99.9% of illness-causing
in the dark without ever actually confirming he's a zombie. For all they know, he's just an innocent, blood-covered survivor looking for help. Instead, he gets 2 shotgun blasts to the face. Dr. Ira continues to the medical examination room and finds a zombie cheerleader crab-walking towards him in the dark. She tears into his chest. At an intersection, the trio pauses. Stevenson hears a sound. Suddenly, zombie Rossi tears into his neck from behind. McQueen leans down to check on him. Stevenson is dead. Rossi leaps out again and bites down on McQueen's forearm. McQueen puts the shotgun to her chin and blows half of her head off. He wraps his arm wound, and they continue onward. Malloy springs out, and Dash blows him away. Let's have a moment to collectively sigh at the incompetence here. Of anyone, Dr. Ira is the only person who knows these blood-covered people are dangerous. There's no way zombie Barbie should even be able to get close to him, let alone tear into his chest without taking a scalpel to the head. Also, why did Dr. Ira stick around down here after killing Mrs. Chen and Childs? I would be sprinting out of this dark basement looking for reinforcements. We're in a police department, for God's sake. And how did 3 trained officers in a narrow hallway let a single zombie sneak up on them twice? It's a 3-way intersection. They should have their backs pressed to each other with their mag lights illuminating each hallway and their guns raised, prepared to fire if somebody attacks. McQueen and Dash find Gallo walking out of the morgue. They aim their guns at him, but he's suddenly swarmed by one of his former victims and zombie Jerry, who feasts on him as McQueen and Dash simply walk away. Finally, they arrive to the morgue supply closets where they find Dr. Ira chowing down on Jimmy's body. Dash is overcome with grief and comes as a horde of zombies floods the hall from either direction. McQueen's fate is left ambiguous. As he stumbles off screen, the credits begin to roll. This horde of zombies seems to be arriving from nowhere and everywhere, so maybe this really is a 7 Days to Die fortnight. At the end, McQueen and Dash could have taken shelter in the supply closet and killed Dr. Ira and Jimmy, but given this horde's ability to find them anywhere in the building, it's likely they would have gotten in eventually. And ultimately, with the general idiocy of this cast, I'm almost relieved that they've all been removed from the gene pool. This entire fiasco of a situation simply boils down to level-headed thinking and coordinating a group response rather than acting alone. Once Mrs. Chen melted in their driveway, this cop squad should have gathered remaining survivors together, barricaded the building, killed the zombies already inside, and worked to re-establish communication with the outside while they waited for the storm to break. Mrs. Chen, Baldy, and the bodies in the morgue who all turned into zombies for unknown reasons were unpreventable. The rest of these deaths were not. Officer Malloy's zombification was purely accidental, the result of his spritz of acid rain. He receives a survivor score of 1 out of 5, simply because we never actually got to see him take these zombies on. As a zombie, he actually seems to be doing okay. Cooper was just in the wrong place, at the wrong time. He didn't want to live anyways, so we'll give him a survivor score of 1 out of 5. Jimmy and Childs had no idea what was going on until it was too late, so they also get a survivor score of 1 out of 5. Officer Rossi, Jerry, and our camera guy were all the sort of terrible horror movie characters who wander into darkened rooms with growling creatures. I award them a survivor score of 0 out of 5. Even if Jerry did half-stab our camera guy to death, prisoner Gallo actually had a decent chance of surviving if he had decided to return to his cell or seek higher ground after encountering Malloy and Jerry in the hallway. He receives a survivor score of 2 out of 5. Dr. Ivor, with his gross ketchup and mustard hands, actually seemed like he could handle himself until Zombie Barbie overloaded his brain and he forgot about the scalpel in his hand. We'll give him a survivor score of 2 out of 5. As for Lieutenant Stevenson, Sergeant Dash, and Detective McGee, what can I really say? If they had any problem-solving skills at all, I'd be able to save most, if not all of them. Detective Dan, I would have given them a much higher score. As it is, we'll give them a change survivor score of 1 out of 5. Generous. Like I said, and his sheer stupidity for lack of leadership. So I think the ass-brain zombies and the Amityville uprising don't you have me the Amityville uprising. Look at the comments. If you like Save a Stranger's Life, hit the subscribe button, see the bell, thanks for watching, and remember, nobody is coming to save you.
Dogs doesn't stand for is no right to information or pleased with is it?
Says Robin on the picture. Harry can't help but think that when he imagined having the Elder One being the master of death, breaking into Gringotts felt laughable, even easy. But now, faced with the same prospect of breaking into by the Elder One, which Voldemort now has, makes the task feel impossible. Now, that said, you may have noticed that their trip to Gringotts is going to be a little bit trickier than usual this time around, because usually they have a pair of Bellatrix and her actual wand, two very useful things. Agrees to help Harry because he watched Harry bury Dobby, which obviously didn't happen this time, so how are they going to break in? Well, really, it's not that different. The fact that they don't have Bellatrix's wand or hair isn't that big of a deal. In fact, even in the main story, after they go through with that plan, Harry remarks about how foolish it was. The more he thought about it, the more foolish it seemed to have disguised Hermione as Bellatrix, to have brought along Bellatrix's wand when the Death Eaters knew who had stolen it. So instead, they just transfigured Hermione the same way they do as Audrey Triad, as similar to someone who might be related to Bellatrix, which really isn't that hard because of the crazy curly hair of both women, and then their plan is just to rely on the Imperious curse cast by Harry with the invisibility cloak to force any resistance to just simply believe whatever they're seeing is real. They also have the small advantage that there are no special rules around the Lestrange family vault this time around because Bellatrix doesn't suspect anyone has broken in. Additionally, not looking like Bellatrix means they don't attract the Death Eater travelers into conversation when they arrive at Diagon Alley. Which is not to say they don't see Travers, they still do, and his new silver encrusted eye, which, like Silver's, reaches out like lightning in every direction. That also still helps them because, let's face it, he's greedy and wants the sword, which they do still promise to give him once they break into the vault, which he knows is like worried about because he saw Ron lose it at the tornado close Ron saving Grimlock from House Planner Hospital. That said, as usual, Harry and Ron do still plan on turning on Grimlock and keeping his sword to himself, at least until after Horcruxes are destroyed, which Hermione doesn't like, but they'll have to. Except their break into Gringotts, at least getting past the front desk, actually goes a little bit smoother than usual. Hermione has to go to the Lestrange family vault. Harry Imperious' Bod Rod at the front desk, who totally believes that Hermione is Lestrange. And once they're past the front desk, honestly, we all know their disguises don't matter anyway. Harry immediately takes off the invisibility cloak and the the same alarms it usually does, which sends all the goblins into a tizzy as they try and pursue Harry, Ron, and Hermione into the Death Story. But as usual, they are not fast enough, and Harry, Ron, and Hermione make it down to the Stroller family home, get inside to recover the cup and the sword. And as usual, this is where Grimlock decides to betray them and steal the sword for himself and try and lock them in one of the vaults. But the difference is, as Grimlock runs away with the sword, much like it did to Pettigrew, the sword lights on fire and tries to set Grimlock ablaze. But Grimlock is faster than Pettigrew and manages to drop it before he's set on fire. And the sound of the sword clanking to the ground amidst all the other confusion alerts the dragon to Grimlock's location, and he rears back to try and blast him with the sheet of fire. But Hermione sees what's about to happen, and despite Grimlock's betrayal, she still sprints forward and tries to stop it, yelling, "Accio sword!" She catches the sword mid-air and jumps in front of Grimlock just before the flames hit him, and much like Ron fighting the Fiend Fire, manages to absorb all of the dragon fire now into the sword as well. She turns to Grimlock, who is now cowering in fear behind her, and says, "We're keeping this." The dragon, interestingly, for however blind it is, seems to have taken in what happened, and as Hermione turns back to it, is surprised to find it lowering its head to her. Shocked, she then turns to free Ron and Harry from the vault, after which they free the dragon, climb on its back, and escape through the ceiling to safety. Huzzah! They ride on the dragon's back for a while before finally jumping off into the water next to a small island. But as ever, Harry is visited by another vision of Voldemort, who has been informed of the break-in, and at long last realizes Harry has been hunting Voldemort. So in an absolute wave of fury, Voldemort's wand drops over and over, having adopted Draco's new form of punishment, Insectum Sempra, slashes through the air, cutting up every Death Eater in sight, and then he starts recounting all the locations of the Horcruxes he must now go check. The cave, the shadow, Hogwarts, Nagini. The cave, the shadow, Hogwarts, Nagini. Back on the island with Harry, Ron, and Hermione, Harry bolts up and says, "Hogwarts! There's a Horcrux at Hogwarts I've just seen." But Ron and Hermione are focused on something else. The cup sitting before them. Hermione's still holding the sword, and she hands it to Ron for him to destroy it like he did the locket. But Ron looks up incredulously. "What? No, I think this one has to be you." And so Hermione, with the dragon still soaring overhead, raises the sword, which immediately erupts into flames and lets out an ear-splitting dragon call. She brings the sword down hard on the cup, and it is destroyed instantly. Harry and Ron simply stare on, as impressed as they've ever been. Harry turns to Ron and says, "We're dating, you know." Hermione, "Yeah, just also dating. I thought you were good with dragons. These guys are mean." And from there, they obviously need to make their way to Hogwarts, where they can't apparate, so they do the next best thing. Hogsmeade. And of course, we all know how that goes. Gather all the charm, Death Eaters, Dementors, Patronus, Aberforth, his cat, his goat Cronus, typical. Not to lose that Harry and Slytherin, Neville has been far less involved than you. And as such, he has not formed his little secret base in the room for requirements. Which is not to say Neville isn't still a really highly motivated and skilled fighter. He's just not the little leader of the in-school rebellion. Which is a problem, because Neville and his secret base are usually out there, and Ron and Hermione make their way into the castle. Well, the good news is there's a very obvious and absolutely amazing way to get into the castle that we have not been able to use until now. Dobby. Usually Aberforth is the one who sends Dobby to help Harry, Ron, and Hermione in Malfoy Manor, but since Ron had the Illuminator this time and managed to rescue everyone by himself, that didn't come into play, so Dobby is still alive. And not just alive, but has a good relationship with Aberforth and has the unique magical ability to apparate inside the walls of Hogwarts. So after Aberforth calls Dobby and offers the solution to the trio, Harry asks him, "Is that true, Dobby? You can apparate inside the castle?" And Dobby replies, "Now use Dobby. Dobby is risky." Now, when he's rescued, seen by the heroes are snake upon entering the castle, so they have Dobby apparate them into the one section of the castle they are positive will not be under watch. The Chamber of Secrets. Back inside the castle, y'all. Feels like we need some smoke. Once inside, however, Hermione realizes that the three of them aren't going to be able to search the entire castle by themselves to find something no student in 50 years has found. Certainly, at least not before Voldemort arrives. Speaking of whom, Voldemort has now checked the shack and is sailing across the lake on his way to check on the plot. Hermione looks around and, inspired by the location of their old DA meetings, has an idea. She pulls out the master coin they used to use to set dates for the DA meetings and changes hers to read, "Call Dobby." And within seconds, Dobby begins hearing his name being called, and with a crack, leaves and returns with Neville, Luna, Ginny. And over the next 10 minutes, the room slowly starts to fill as the house elf flutters around the castle from room to room, bringing people to the chamber. From there, Harry explains they need to find something of Ravenclaw's and find it fast. Voldemort is on his way to the school. The next bit plays out as you might expect. Luna offers up the idea of the lost diadem of Ravenclaw, and she and Harry decide to head up to the Ravenclaw common room to look for it. Of course, they don't find the diadem in the common room, but this is where Harry runs runs into the Caros and McGonagall. While Harry doesn't have the exact same relationship that he usually has with McGonagall, telling her that he's working on Dumbledore's order and her absolute faith in Harry is still enough to mobilize her to start setting up defenses around the castle.
I've always wanted to use that spell.
And it's a good thing too, because Voldemort is on his way. Harry realizes that the castle is going to need as many defenders as possible and has a Dobby return him back to the chamber, where he's alarmed to find most of the former members of the DA and most of the members of the Order of the Phoenix surrendered while Harry was ready to come home. Dobby was busy. Impressed, Harry calls the Basilisk and, like he did to the DA meetings, has it ferry everyone up to the Great Hall. McGonagall has gathered other students and is preparing for battle. Snape has used all of his best to try and reach Harry so that he can tell the truth about everything and give him the right clutch, as usual, is very possible. Harry can do so by the others. This is the part where Harry realizes that nobody in the memory has seen the diadem and goes talk to Neil and Headless Nick about the Grey Lady. This time, however, Harry doesn't have any relationship at all with Neil and Headless Nick, so instead, he has to consult with Bloody Mary. Much to Harry's dismay, the Bloody Mary goes into a very long-winded, dramatic story about how he loves the Grey Lady and how he's the one who killed her, and that's why he's Harry being Jane. But eventually, like, come on, parents, here's the end for it. He tells Harry where he's not really. After some light convincing, reveals that she told Tom Riddle the hiding place of the diadem, and more pieces of the puzzle click into place in Harry's mind. And finally, he came back to his childhood. That's when he even realized that Voldemort's arrogance lead him to believe he was the only student to ever find the requirement. The only trouble is, Harry himself is never been made. But, fortunately, he knows someone who has. Dobby! Harry cries, and the elf appears almost at once. I need you to bring me Draco Malfoy. And then on and on. Dobby does so and explains as much of the situation as he's comfortable to Draco, saying, we need to enter the room requirement to find the diadem. Is there a way to make it show the room that hides things? Draco just smiles and immediately summons the room that had been almost the entire year of last year, which of course we all know is filled floor to ceiling with junk. As the four of them and Dobby search the room frantically, Harry asks Draco about being forced to torture them. Draco looks absolutely ashamed of himself, but explains that he was forced to do it as a reward of punishment to himself, and decided to try and use the opportunity to incapacitate as many Death Eaters as he could. I'm not sure what after they paid for that failures, he just healed them with silver magic. The weird thing is they all learned to receive their heads wounds, everyone else is punished. That's some twisted way now. Magical proof of their devotion, proof they never let me down again. Harry looked at Draco and announced the where they had doing everything he could to help. He was right just as much as the rest of them and in as much danger, if not more, being right next to Voldemort. And then they see it, the diadem. Harry recognizes it almost immediately, almost as if he can feel the dark magic coming off of it. He turns to Draco to point it out, but that's when he hears it. Crabbe and Goyle had followed him into the room. We knew you'd come here, yelled Crabbe. Here's the thing. Crabbe and Goyle, obviously not very bright, but by now, even they have heard the story about how Draco used the room of requirement to break into Hogwarts last year and help murder Dumbledore. It turns out when Dobby appeared to whisk Draco away to Harry, Crabbe and Goyle were right next to him and guessed where they might be headed. Harry whirls around looking for Ron and Hermione, assuming the worst, hoping neither of them has been hit by the spell. Draco does the same, and simultaneously they realize it's not Ron or Hermione who's been hit by the spell, but Dobby, who crumples to the ground. At once and together, Harry and Draco raise their wands and shout "Stupefy," easily blasting Crabbe and Goyle back. They rush to Dobby's side, but it's too late. He's dead. Dobby, who had done so much, whose freedom had been the first, if not faintest, sign that Draco and Harry were actually on the same side. Draco is in tears as he lays to rest the small elf that once served his family in a clearing made amidst the junk. I think you should do it, says Harry. What? I think you should be the one to destroy it. You found this place. You understood it. I think it should be you. What is it? Asks Draco, holding up the diadem. Harry studies Draco's face for a long time and then makes a decision. It's a piece of his soul. We have to destroy this one and the snake before we can kill Voldemort. Draco's eyes widen, but he doesn't even hesitate. How do I do it? Fiend fire, says Harry. I think the room will be able to contain it. Cast it, and we'll all get out. They move the bodies of Crabbe, Goyle, and Dobby outside the room, place the diadem on the floor, and Draco casts the spell. Flames erupt out of his wand, torrenting through the stacks of forgotten items, barreling into the diadem. Harry and Draco slam the door shut just in time. The door fades back into the wall. It's done. I also like to think Draco then summoned a new version of the Room of Requirement that had like one single tiny little hammock in it and put Dobby to rest for good. Outside the Room of Requirement, though, the Battle of Hogwarts has begun in earnest. Spells are flying through the windows, suits of armors are running down the halls, and Harry can see giants approaching the outer gates. Now what? Says Ron, sword in hand. Kill the snake, said Harry. Where is it? Asked Hermione. And on command, Harry enters Voldemort's mind and finds him in the Shrieking Shack, Nagini floating in an orb above him, Lucius behind him. Bring me Severus, he tells him. Harry puts on the invisibility cloak, and together the four of them begin sprinting through the grounds in the direction of the Whomping Willow. As they pass, they observe the raging battle. The silver glare of so many Death Eaters adorned is shining in the moonlight. They watch in horror as a spell bounces off Raoul's shimmering shoulder and hits Lupin in the chest, who falls to the ground, lifeless. Ron spots Luna with a giant bearing down upon her. Him and Hermione veer off to help. Impedimenta! Hermione shouts, stopping the giant's club in midair. Ron rushes in with the blazing sword of Gryffindor and slashes the giant's foot, setting it aflame and creating a giant 20-foot pyre in the middle of the battlefield. And in all the commotion, they lose track of where Harry is under the invisibility cloak. Seeing the flames, Harry is immediately reminded of the last time he was sprinting across the grounds like this, chasing Snape. How he had cast fiend fire at them, how he had escaped. And in his rage, Harry trips and the cloak falls off. And that's when they appear. Dementors. Excited by the sudden appearance of Harry Potter, they begin pouring into the grounds. And suddenly, Harry's rage turns to fear. He reaches for his father's wand, but can't find it. He's dropped it when he fell. His mother's screams begin to fill his ears, when suddenly, out of the darkness, Expecto Patronum! A brilliant white peacock goes streaking in the direction of the Dementors. Draco's Patronus. It starts to drive them away, but there's just too many. The single peacock can't fend them all off. Expecto Patronum! And suddenly the peacock is not alone. It's joined by the silver doe. Harry whips around to see who cast the spell and cannot believe his eyes. Severus Snape. And the combined strength of the doe and peacock are enough to drive the Dementors away. You! Harry yells as Snape descends on him. You set the Patronus, but whose wand did you? Yes, is all Snape is able to get out before the most unusual thing begins happening to him. Snape's silver hand, of its own accord, grabs his neck, forcing him to the ground. Choking. Harry frantically runs over and tries to help, but he can't stop it. Snape locks eyes with Harry and with his free hand manages to draw a memory from his head with the unknown wand. Harry collects it. Then, with his last breath, Snape forces the wand into Harry's hand and collapses. Dead. And upon grabbing the wand, Harry is filled with the same warm, glowing sensation that he had when his father's wand had presented itself to him in Godric's Hollow. Shock and confusion flood every ounce of Harry's being. Snape? How? But why? When? Harry looks at the glistening memory in his hand, so familiar from all of his lessons with Dumbledore, and knows where he has to go. I have to go back to the castle, he shouts, and he, Ron, and Hermione race backwards while Draco stays behind. His father has found him and Snape. And of course, we all know what happens next. Harry goes and watches Snape's memories. He learns that Snape and his mother met as kids, that Snape loved her for almost all of his life, and that he, Harry, is yet another Horcrux that has to be destroyed. Interestingly, this is also the first time Harry sees his father and the Marauders bullying Snape at Hogwarts. When Snape is hoisted into the air by his ankle, he drops all of his books, and unbelievably, Harry stares down and sees his own copy of Advanced Potion Making and realizes with a start that Snape was the Half-Blood Prince. But there are some big changes here as well, memories that aren't in the main story. First, Harry is brought back to the moment where Dumbledore died and realizes Snape did not kill Dumbledore. Protect Draco, Severus, says Dumbledore. He has just accepted my offer to protect and hide his family, but my time has come. Harry watches in shock as Dumbledore dies in Snape's arms, but not at his hand. Reflecting back on how the locket affected Ron and Hermione, Harry realizes that Dumbledore lived in his office with the ring for almost an entire year. That, combined with the potion he drank on the night he died, brought him to the point of death. Then Snape points his wand at the ground and yells, Avada Kedavra! And you guys thought this thumbnail was a lie. No, it was a clue! Then the memory shifts and Harry sees Snape return to the Potter's home in Godric's Hollow, where he collects Lily's wand and leaves the flowers and James' wand buried underneath. He watches as Snape exits Godric's Hollow and passes the statue in the center of town, where he uses Lily's wand to cast an impervious charm on just her. Actually, while we're here, this feels like a good time to pause and say thank you again to everyone who submitted artwork last week of Harry finding the wand in the lilies at the Potter's house with the silver doe. I've been going through them all week. They're all so amazing. Thank you guys so much for sending these in. Like, it brings me such joy to see how you have brought to life the images in my head, and I just love them so much. Thank you Thank you all. But back to Snape. The scene changes again, and he's talking to Draco at Malfoy Manor. The Dark Lord rewards his most devoted servants. You would be wise not to cross with Draco, or his own hand may turn on you. He sees Snape in the headmaster's office and Phineas Nigellus informing him that Harry, Ron, and Hermione are heading to Godric's Hollow. Then he watches as Snape casts the dough to lead Harry to his father's wand. And Harry understood that for Snape, this was meant as justification for taking Lily's wand, an exchange, and that to present Harry with the wand of a man he had hated so much was an act of forgiveness. A true demonstration of the faith he had in Harry, the Slytherin boy who had proven Snape wrong about his father, who had shown him the true nature of a Slytherin, perhaps the kind Snape himself always wanted to be. And then Harry arrives back in the headmaster's office, but almost as if on cue, finds himself right back in Voldemort's mind, where he's presented with yet another vision of Snape. But this time it's through the eyes of Voldemort, who is staring down at the dead body of Snape, which Lucius and Draco have brought him. And he sees with a silver hand around Snape's neck that Snape has betrayed him. Pathetic, he scowls, and yet it is fitting, Severus, and in ways you do not understand. And then the memory exits, and Voldemort begins his speech to the entire battle, instructing Harry to find him in the Forbidden Forest, or else he, Voldemort, shall enter the fray and strike down every one of Harry's allies. And Harry knows what he has to do. He explains the entire situation to Ron and Hermione, who of course try and talk him out of it, but in their hearts know this is how it has to be. Harry tells Hermione that he loves her, and she kisses him farewell. I hope you're not expecting one of those from me, says Ron. And even though the situation is so dire and Ron's joke really isn't that funny, the three of them break into laughter, unsure if their tears are from joy or sadness. I love you too, man, he says to Ron, and they hug. Then Harry takes one last look at his two best friends, dons the invisibility cloak, and turns to the forest. And this walk is as sad as ever as Harry exits the castle and witnesses all of his injured and fallen allies. We already mentioned Lupin, but yes, Fred and Tonks also still die. And as Harry makes his way into the forest, he remembers the snitch and whispers to it, finally, I am about to die. The resurrection stone reveals itself, and Harry immediately uses it to summon James, Lily, Sirius, Lupin, and Snape. Yes, Snape. Remember that in this version of the story, Harry's non-stop hatred of Snape across all 7 books hasn't really occurred. And that's because Harry has been in Slytherin this entire time, and thus their relationship has been significantly more mutual. Not to mention, Harry has just witnessed firsthand Snape's ultimate act of forgiveness and sacrifice for Harry's cause. Lily, Lupin, Sirius, and even James all look over at Snape, and then back at Harry and smile, as ever impressed by his endless humility and nobleness. Thank you for the wands, Harry says to Snape, and James nods his head in approval of this gift. And Harry then proceeds to have his usual conversations with the rest, apologizing to Remus, asking Sirius if death is going to hurt, and asking his parents if they'll go with him to the end, which of course they all do. Until that is, Harry reaches Voldemort in Aragog's lair, where he finally drops the resurrection stone. Fun note, by the way, but because the basilisk is alive, the acromantulas, which usually just sort of flee the forest and run at the school, definitely run in the other direction, because as ever, they are incredibly afraid of the basilisk. Doesn't make a huge difference, although I like to think it means Hagrid got in a few more punches. In fact, you know what? I'm sure of it. He got in a few more punches. He punched Fenrir Greyback square in the face. The face! Which, you know, I guess that probably means that he didn't attack Lavender Brown. There you go. Lavender Brown. Not a werewolf. Or whatever. Whatever happened to Bill. Speaking of Hagrid, though, he is also still present for the scene and aghast when he sees Harry entering the clearing. Which brings us back to Harry's imminent death, which goes down very much as you might expect. Voldemort levels the Elder Wand at Harry and shouts, Avada Kedavra, and kills Harry. For 5 minutes. And surprisingly, the scene in King's Cross actually isn't that much different at all. Most of that scene is just about Dumbledore coming clean about all of his past, which of course is all the same and happened way before Harry was ever sorted into Slytherin. They talk about Snape and the Deathly Hallows. Harry sees the gross, disfigured, baby, bloody thing on the floor that Voldemort will become in the afterlife. And then Harry decides to come back, and he and Voldemort both awaken in the course, although Harry remains completely still, pretending to still be dead. Voldemort, of course, usually sends Narcissa Malfoy to go check whether or not Harry is actually dead, but this time he sends the man who forged his silver army, Draco. Draco checks Harry's pulse, realizes he's alive, and announces to the crowd, he's dead! And so the conquering army marches to Hogwarts, moonlight bouncing off their silvery wounds in the trees, Harry in Hagrid's arms, as usual. And this next part, I'd like to think if you were reading in a book, the chapter would be called Draco's Army. Voldemort's army arrives at the gates of Hogwarts, Harry's apparently dead body in tow. Everyone stares on in disbelief, unable to take in what they're seeing. Hermione is crying into Ron's shoulder, who's standing next to Luna, their hands clasped. Voldemort announces Harry's death and commands everyone to lay down their arms. Everyone, of course, roars back in opposition, and Voldemort attempts to silence them, but the charm doesn't hold. And Hermione steps forward from the crowd, the sword of Gryffindor on her shoulder. Tears streak down her face, but her voice is calm and steady. You may have killed Harry, but you'll never kill what he stood for, and will never back down, she says, raising the sword above her head, lighting it on fire, which also lets out another ear-splitting dragon cry, which seems to raise the morale and spirit of everyone in the army of Hogwarts. Voldemort merely laughs. So you intend to slay us all with a single sword? Mudblood? Draco, give Miss Granger a taste of what happens to those who cross Lord Voldemort. And Voldemort's army laughs as Draco walks forward, their anticipation palpable as they know this lone girl is about to suffer much worse than any of them ever had. That's quite a sword, Granger, says Draco, but I'm not sure it'll be enough to save you. Harry remained frozen in Hagrid's arms, but couldn't believe what he was hearing. Draco had just lied to Voldemort for him. What was he doing? Harry opened his eyelid a fraction of an inch to take in the scene before him. Draco raised his wand and let out a high, loud, hissing whisper. Harry could barely make out what he was saying. It sounded familiar. Sectum Sempra? But no, Hermione remained quiet. She wasn't screaming. And then, all of a sudden, Hagrid seemed to be shaking. What was he missing? But then Harry realized it wasn't Hagrid. The ground itself was shaking. Voldemort looked around in confusion, then suddenly realized what Draco had done and what he had said. No! Nagini, kill him! He shouted as the great snake lunged forward towards Draco. Draco turned and saw the snake, fangs out and ready to kill. Nagini lunged, but as she did, the floor beneath her erupted, and out rose the giant basilisk, whose fangs engulfed Nagini. The snake writhed, but there was no escape, and with one great crunch, Nagini fell in pieces to the floor. Dead. Cheers erupted from the defenders of Hogwarts, but only for a moment before Voldemort raised his wand and they were once again silenced. You'd use my own basilisk against me? How is this possible? Only those descended from my great ancestor Salazar Slytherin can speak possible tongue. You're wrong, said Draco. Any true Slytherin can control the basilisk. That's how Harry Potter beat you 5 years ago in the Chamber of Secrets when you took me down there to try and kill me. The basilisk recognized he was a true Slytherin. Fury is visible on Voldemort's face, the thing that had made him so special, so unique, that proved he was descended from the great Salazar Slytherin, was not what he had thought. The basilisk had coiled itself behind Draco and locked its repaired yellow eyes with Voldemort's red ones. I've repressed those memories a long time, but tonight they came back, and I realized when you possessed me, you left memories of how to control snakes. And now this snake is going to finish you off. And the basilisk opened its huge mouth, threatening death with every horrible long fang. Voldemort stood temporarily frozen, his eyes barely slit beneath his anger. And then his wand slashed through the air, and there was a flash of green light, and his spell connected with the back of the basilisk's throat. And the great snake, who had helped Harry defeat Voldemort once before, who had helped him through the Triwizard Tournament, aided Dumbledore's army, and destroyed the Peveril Ring, fell with a great crash. Voldemort let out a cold, high laugh, but for the first time, his followers did not follow suit. Instead, they just stood there, unsure, confused by what they'd just seen. Do you see who you follow now? Draco shouted into the crowd. The supposed heir of Slytherin has just destroyed Slytherin's own monster. He sought to kill me, a pureblood. He has had me spill your own blood all year long. You wear those scars like badges of honor, marks of loyalty. But after what you've just seen, do you really think he would ever repay that loyalty to you? And at these words, a murmur spread throughout Voldemort's army, followed by a scream. Voldemort turns around to see his nearest Death Eater, Travers, clasping his eye, which is suddenly closing in, crushing the rest of his face. Similar screams can be heard throughout the crowd, as every Death Eater who felt even a moment of uncertainty at Draco's words are suddenly being attacked by their own silver adornments. Voldemort's army is crumbling. No! Screams Voldemort, who in pure anger turns and fires Sectum Sepra back at Draco. The spell connects, and Draco, standing with his wand still aloft, watches in horror as his arm hits the floor. The army of Hogwarts stares dumbstruck at Draco, while Voldemort stares down at his own wand, which has begun glowing. Voldemort feels an unusual sense of warmth rush over him and lets out another high-pitched laugh. And then, in unison, the army of Hogwarts lets out their own roar and charges Voldemort's wilting army. Harry finally takes his as his cue to roll out of Hagrid's arms and re-don the invisibility cloak. He runs around the battle, stunning as many Death Eaters as he can, but he almost doesn't even need to help. All around him, the enemy is falling, pulled down by their own silver armor or else by the oncoming volley of spells. But not all of them. Harry noticed Bellatrix Lestrange was still fighting unimpeded, her faith clearly having never wavered from her master. She alone seemed to be battling erratically and skillfully through the throng, spells flying from her in every direction. Harry saw her direct a curse at Mrs. Weasley when suddenly she was blown back by the most powerful shield charm Harry had ever seen. Rubble exploded from a nearby wall as the curse was successfully deflected, and through the debris stepped Neville, wand held high. You tortured my parents! You... And like Harry had never seen Neville before, he began dueling Bellatrix, who laughed maniacally and flashed a silver grin back at him. Crucio! bellowed Bellatrix, and Harry watched in horror as the curse connected with Neville. Neville screamed, but somehow miraculously managed to stay on his feet. Bellatrix's guard was down, and although Neville was clearly enduring horrible physical pain, he managed to raise his wand and cast a spell. And as his spell landed, the Cruciatus spell seemed to lift from Neville. Bellatrix choked on her own laugh, and then... Cheers erupted from every corner, and now all eyes turned to Voldemort, who was dueling simultaneously Ron, Hermione, and Luna. Don't touch them! Shouted Harry as he finally revealed himself, and the other three retreated into the crowd. And more cheers erupted at the sight of Harry alive, who tells everyone to stand down. Now it's just him and Voldemort. It's over, Tom. You corrupted your own army, and now you stand surrounded by enemies. There are no more Horcruxes, and there can be no escape. You've lost. Voldemort laughs in response. But perhaps you do not understand, Potter. There can be no power greater than I. I, the most powerful wizard in the world, have just become master of this wand. Dumbledore's wand. The Elder Wand. You're wrong. And if you try to kill me again, you won't just fail to kill me like you did earlier tonight. But it'll be the last thing you ever do. What is this? You think you can defeat me? That somehow you are more magically powerful? That you have a wand more powerful than mine? I do. In fact, I think it is you who do not understand, Tom. You are not the master of that wand. Oh, but I am, Potter. Much has happened on this night. Although you are right, even I believe perhaps I was not the master of the Elder Wand because I had not killed the man who killed its previous master, Dumbledore. And who do you think killed Dumbledore? Shot back Harry with the air of someone who absolutely knows the truth. Severus Snape. I see how foolish it was now to entrust him with that head. But see how fate favors Lord Voldemort. I sought to kill Snape this very evening, but discovered his betrayal, much like the fools around me, had already finished him off. You're right about one thing. Severus Snape did betray you, but not tonight. He's been working against you ever since you tried to kill my mother, and he never killed Dumbledore. I watched his memories tonight. He faked the entire thing. Dumbledore died of his own accord after drinking the potion you made in that cave. But then I did kill the previous Master Potter. Yeah, you did kill Dumbledore, but someone else claimed mastery of the wand first, and on your orders. As usual, like you did with your followers tonight, you were your own worst enemy. Before Dumbledore died, he was disarmed by Draco Malfoy. Well, I must thank you, Potter. That really does clear things up. Draco disarmed Dumbledore, you say? Well, I'm not sure if you've been paying attention, but I have just disarmed him in return. Somewhere in the crowd, George Weasley yelled, "Boo!" What you may have missed in all the confusion, Potter, is that after I attacked Draco, this wand glowed in my hand, the same way my first one did all those years ago in Ollivanders. The Elder Wand has chosen me. You still don't get it, do you? You continue to make the same mistake over and over because you can't understand the true power of love. And Harry could feel the moment approaching as he gripped his father's wand tighter, keeping it aimed at Voldemort. My mother beat you 17 years ago. She beat you by sacrificing herself for me. She didn't need to die, but she chose to anyway. And yet here I stand before you, Potter. Where is your mother now? I've seen her. Tonight, actually. She's whole and happy and proud of a son. And I've seen you too. What you become in death. You're foul. You're disgusting. You can't even move. You dare. Yes, I dare. When you brought yourself back to life, you took my blood. And in doing so, you brought my mother's protection into your body. She's with you wherever you go. Your filthy mother is dead. Yes, but she's beaten you. Think, when did that wand choose you? When you attacked Draco? Draco, who had just stood up against you to protect everyone from you? Voldemort stared back, anger on his face, taking in every single word. The wand chooses the wizard, Tom, or in this case, the witch. That wand didn't choose you. It chose my mother, whose protection lives in you. Voldemort looked stunned, but recovered quickly. But it makes no difference then, Potter. Your mother is not here. Even if you are right, then we duel on skill alone. Actually, she's more here than you think. Before he died tonight, Severus Snape gave me this wand. My mother's wand, which he recovered from my house because he loved her, and it chose me. And if the Elder Wand chose my mother, and her wand chose me, then I am the master of the Elder Wand. And then, with both his parents' wands leveled at the enemy, Harry shouted his spell at the exact same time as Voldemort. Expelliarmus Abracadabra! And Voldemort's spell backfired into himself. The Elder Wand sailed through the air, and Harry caught it. Voldemort fell backwards. Dead. Epilogue! But Dad, why do I have to take the train when you could just use flu powder? Oh, come on now, son. I once had to hunt down 5 unknowable dark treasures and destroy them, and sacrifice myself to destroy the darkest wizard alive. I think you can handle a little train ride. Besides, it's all part of the experience. I met your mother and my best friend on my first train ride to Hogwarts, you know. I'm not your best friend, chimed in Hermione. Of course you are, dear, said Harry. I was just telling Albus here about the first time we met. Did I hear you right? I'm not your best friend, said Ron, arriving behind them at platform 9 3/4 with Luna. Of course you are, dear, said Harry, and they all laughed. How is Aquila feeling about heading off for her first year? Hermione asked Ron. Oh, I think she's excited. Really, it's a little Leo here who's been the trouble. He's so eager to go himself. Same with Lily here, said Harry, motioning to his youngest child, and only daughter. Yes, Harry still has 3 kids, and they have the same names. I think he would name his kids the same way. Obviously, though, they are different people, since they have a different mom. Draco was also, as usual, present at the platform, although, admittedly, still armless and helping his young son onto the train. And I thought for a while about who Draco might be married to at this point. In the main story, it's a woman named Astoria Greengrass, who's a completely off-screen character, and it occurred to me that Ginny might be a viable option here, since she and Draco were both possessed by Voldemort back in Chamber of Secrets, and Draco has, like, such